first audit?
When we went in to find out about the device access that was there, we were finding that we'd got lots of families and lots of households that had got access. We were excited by this. We were thinking, this is great. You know, there is lots of families and lots of households that were going to be able to access our online learning facilities. As Matt's hinted to already, what we didn't really know was that they didn't have the right device. And what we hadn't factored in trying to rush forward to ensure that we'd got all of the information in place is we didn't think as much about process. It's just about, let's just gather as much information as possible quickly. What we needed to do was really drill down that information further and really find out what devices were available at home, had they got the internet connectivity, but also to really consider the siblings as well. And that meant not just thinking about the siblings that come to Mowmacre, because we could find out about them really easily, but what did we know about the rest of the family? Were there other siblings there? Were there siblings that might be going to different schools? Because some of our families have siblings that are not all in the same school, or that they have siblings that are in high school. And we would need to be considering that as well. And you might have found this as you've provided, or may have provided that for your schools too. So we ended up having to have conversations again, and the data was having to be looked at and researched again. And with the use of the communication that we'd already got open, as Matt has mentioned, from our wellbeing team and from our teachers, we were able to ascertain further information. And you can see there from the table that is displayed the number of devices that were needed. So we've got cohorts there. You'll also see from that our varying numbers. They look really different now from what they did then. But also you'll see that over half of those cohorts were without a device for themselves. And what is even more concerning is that access to internet, that we had families that weren't able to, let alone connect to any form of Wi-Fi, but actually there wasn't connectivity, and that really concerned us. And how are we going to get past that that barrier, and to also communicate with many families that didn't have that email address? Maybe how are we going to be ensuring that we get that information out there? And a number of our families have actually since had email addresses provided for them, and we've supported them in that process to ensure that we were able to get those groundworks completed, so that then we could build on that and support them as we went further on through this process. So yeah, we got a long way to go in providing devices, and we took steps to ensure that was happening. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how we moved towards providing those devices, and how we ensured that our staff and our children were able to provide for that as we moved out of that lockdown period. And then when we came back in September 2020, before the further lockdown from January. So if we can skip ahead, Matt, on the slides, that would be great. So we got all of this information, and obviously we knew that we were possibly going to have to consider going into a lockdown situation yet again, obviously not knowing when or how that might look. We had a number of COVID bubbles shut, and Estelle will mention those a little bit more in detail, but we had isolation pockets. As a school, we have done so far quite well in terms of ensuring that we had safe systems in place to minimise the impact of COVID on our classes. And there was some of those staff that we needed to respond to, in ensuring that they could respond to our children and our families through connectivity and through the use of devices. So coming back, we were keen to ensure that we provided Teams as that platform for a majority of our children, and we were using that in classrooms and encouraging staff to use that within their daily practice, so that children were building that knowledge just through experience in the classroom of seeing how Teams worked. Also, we were keen to ensure that our staff were upskilling. Our staff were responsive and reactive to that, and we gave opportunity for our TAs and for our teachers to upskill on aspects of that through the MEC. But how are we still going to get over that massive need to provide? How are we going to ensure that if we were sending a bubble home, or that we were going into a whole school lockdown, how would we ensure that we met the needs through the use of devices and also through the use of Teams? The catch-up grant of 29,800 gave us that first input of finance that we needed to start to fill that gap, to ensure that we were providing technology into classrooms and ensuring that we were providing devices should a lockdown happen. And that money was spent on ensuring we got the right device, and that was a fantastic start. We've continued on to get devices for our children through gifting, through grants, through contacts, and through that catch-up grant, which has been fantastic. And you can see in the table in front of you the number of devices that have been provided across those year groups. Now, that changed again. That changed as well, because as more people found out that we were providing quality devices, that the need grew. And as other bubbles shut, and as obviously changes in circumstance occurred, we were needing to respond to that. And we've done everything in our power and in the possibilities we've had to ensure that all of our children have had those devices. We used laptops within Key Stage 2, and then we started to look at how we could use iPads to gain access for Key Stage 1 and Foundation. Kindle Fires landed in our lap through some gifting, and they were filled with the capacity to use Teams and Tapestry, which was really helpful. And we've used them and are now implemented them within our classrooms, and we'll talk about that a little bit further as we go on. So it was about building confidence for our children, awareness of the platform, but also developing the opportunity for our children to log in by themselves, whether that is in Foundation onto Tapestry or whether it was onto Teams. But also spending the time working with our families in lockdown, in isolation, to ensure that we were giving them that opportunity to learn. And that digital focus is what helped us set up for our January lockdown and to respond to that rapidly.
Thanks, Tim. And I think, any advice that we could give any school really who's kind of looking to, develop devices is really to get to know your families and to really know them in terms of what devices does each family have. Because, we started, like Tim said, the first audit that we didn't give us the information that we needed. And we were put into some kind of false sense of security, really, thinking that a family had full access when actually that full access consisted of one device or two devices, which had to be spread over a family that, may, as Tim said, may have children in secondary school that was also reliant on that device. We actually have had some children that we've given a device to, who's then that device has also been borrowed by another child in another school in their family. And again, that provokes a completely different conversation of, what one school provides and what school doesn't provide. Tim mentioned the 29,800. That was a godsend, and we discussed that at length about the best way of using that money, and that was a full leadership discussion, because it was important that we all had that same view and that same ethos of how we wanted to kind of really empower our parents and empower our children to actually have that full access that they deserved. And it wasn't a decision that was taken lightly. And, there is talk about, catch-up funding being provided again in September. And again, we've already started talking about how that funding will project us into wave 2 of providing devices, within school to those children that have a device at home. But if we want to create that truly blended experience, then would need to have a device in school as well, because we're aware that some children having devices at home may be accessing through their PlayStation or their Xbox, which obviously they can't bring into school to have access within the classroom. So yeah, the advice there, make sure that you are doing those audits and understanding what the situation is for each individual family. So what we're going to move on to next is Estelle Ewing. Estelle Ewing is my curriculum lead and also assistant head teacher, and she's going to talk about how the learning actually took place. So Estelle, over to you.
Okay, so first off, to ensure that we were able to fully enable the children to be learning online, we needed to make sure that every area was covered. So as Tim and Matt have said, we managed to source funding to sort out the devices that were needed to get that connectivity out to our children. We enabled the children to understand the expectations of those. But of course, we still had to cater for the needs of our staff. And our staff had a multitude of, they had a variety of skills and a completely different skill set. Okay, Matt. Okay, so our skill set, our staff are absolutely amazing, and they've got different skills which are utilised at every opportunity at Mowmacre Hill, and we've got some very specialist staff who are brilliant at dealing with emotional support and social and emotional and behaviour support as well. But we were looking at something completely different here. We were looking at digital learning. And as you can see here, these are the range of experiences that our staff had. Some staff were fine on using CPOMs, which is our recording system, but then we go all the way through on that spectrum of their expertise or experience in using a digital platform. Our highest skilled staff, she'd just returned from teaching abroad in Italy, and she'd had experience of online teaching. But you can see we've gone from using CPOMs at one extreme of the spectrum to having somebody who had experience of teaching online at the other. So we needed to cater for all of their needs. So how were staff feeling at the thought of going through a digital platform? Well, I think most of them would have definitely said they felt confused. And when I talked to staff, quite a few were nervous or anxious about it. But then you had some people who were really excited. And then you had the people in the middle who just said, yeah, we've got to do it. And they were quite resigned to it. So again, we had a huge variety of the way that staff were feeling about using a digital platform. Now, I was going to use menti.com at this point, but there are 3 of us presenting. So I'd like you to use your chat bar now. And can you think about how did you ensure that your staff felt confident in using a virtual platform? And if we could get some ideas and share some ideas there, and then I'll talk you through what we did at ours. So if you go to the chat bar now, what did you do to ensure that your staff felt confident using a virtual platform? And were there any quick wins that encouraged adult confidence? So have we got any good ideas coming from the other schools? I noticed that we've got Julie there from Boothwood, and I think, Julie, you'd agree you were using iPads. All children have had iPads at your school, and staff, they were using an assessment system, so they were quite competent and confident, weren't they? We've got Amy there who said question and answer sessions weekly to discuss their problems and sharing learning and top tips. And Rachel Newham, how-to guides and tips and tricks, sharing at Zoom staff meetings. I think they're absolutely vital. And we had a similar thing that Tim did every week, and we called it Tech to Teach, and it was giving those quick wins on programs that would be suitable for online learning. We've got Jessica saying that we had lots of training and a chance to use it with low stakes. Yeah, if you used it before you had to go on to online learning, you didn't feel as threatened by it. So it's about practicing it while we were in school, but not having to use the online learning. We were choosing to use it at times. So Jessica also used Teams for homework and staff meeting times. Ralph's had staff training on Teams and engagement with the EdTech demonstrator program. So brilliant, you're getting that first-hand experience with people who have already made the mistakes and learned along the way. And Julie, sorry I mentioned you earlier there. So quality CPD, and you also used the Apple Store for free training and a nice dinner in Leicester afterwards. That does sound like a quick win there. So brilliant. So we've got lots of ideas there of how you've used it, and I'll just talk you through the different ideas that we'd use now on the next slide. You can tell I'm a primary teacher with this image. So how did we cultivate that confidence of our adults in school? You know, I've talked about we had a variety of experiences and expertise, but also I think confidence was the key. So we started off by using our staff meeting times during the first lockdown. We were doing all of our staff meetings through Teams, and we got people used to that. And then it was gradually encouraging other people to use it to present. So we focused on our subject leaders during the staff meeting times of the first lockdown. And we started off getting them more confident of the teachers to present in short slots for 5 or 10 minutes. And then by the end of that lockdown, we'd had every subject leader had presented using Teams just to gather information and to move our curriculum on. So that was a very quick win. I think the most important thing that we did was playing with Teams. I've mentioned we had Tech to Teach, but this was used for teachers and teaching support staff. And we were allowed to play around with things, go wrong, laugh at ourselves when we went wrong, and then report it back. We then started to use Teams for storage, and I'll show you that in a moment. I've mentioned the Tech to Teach sessions that we had. We also had quality CPD. Matt ensured at the beginning of this year that digital learning would be our #1 priority. We needed to ensure we'd got that connectivity with our children if we went into a second lockdown or if we had bubble closures. So we had Jo Stone, who came along, and she's delivered lots of our staff meeting, and she delivered a bespoke package for us, catering for our needs at Mowmacre Hill and our cohort. And also part of the performance management, every member of teaching staff and the teaching support staff, they were given a performance management target of going through the online learning at the Microsoft Education Centre. We've just recently done a review of that, and we've been blown away with how many hours people have put into this. So it was a combination of using all of these different areas and developing staff in their confidence for this. So as I mentioned, we started to use Teams as a storage area, and this is just our curriculum area team. And you'll notice on there, we've got every single subject, we've got every single year group. Plans are put onto there. Also, we've got storage of different files. Tim started this off in one of our CPD days in August, so started a staff meeting team, so where everything was stored on there and people could reflect on the staff meetings. So we dipped our toe in there, and then we've moved our complete curriculum over onto Teams from September. So we've got any developments that are coming up are stored on there, planning, long-term plans, short-term plans, any initiatives that are going on. We've even got all of our bounce back, our PHSE there, but people got used to using those channels and then navigating their way around Teams, which definitely helped when we went into online teaching. The next area, Matt, was subject leadership. We decided to move everything over for subject leadership. You'll notice that each different area, they have got their own channel within the Mowmacre Hill curriculum. And then we have also got in there, they have got their subject leadership notebook, and this is where we collect evidence. So we're just working through this at the moment. So if we flick through these now, you'll see we've got prompts for subject evaluation, which is what we've been working on this week. And again, we pride ourselves on taking a collaborative approach. So we've had subject leaders yesterday who have been evaluating their subjects with staff from each of the phase groups. Do you want to flick through these ones, Matt, for me? Also, it doesn't matter. Also in there, we have monitoring evidence. So at least once a half term in a staff meeting, we will have staff bring all their books along and they take photographs of their evidence and they upload it into the notebook, so we've got it there. You'll all know from using monitoring before, from monitoring any subject, quite often a curriculum subject coordinator can take hours and hours and hours just trying to get the work off of teachers. Well, if we've got the whole of the school there in one staff meeting and they've got their books, it's just a matter of using your iPad, taking the picture, annotating it and uploading it into the area. So even during lockdown, we've collected videos and evidence of English, maths, science and assessment for learning. Again, all done during staff meeting time, so it's that collaboration and we can monitor the quality of it as well. This picture here shows about the staff who were shielding. So we had a range of different experiences and confidence in using digital technology, but we also needed to ensure that those staff who were shielding felt part of our teaching community. So we had one teacher who was clinically extremely vulnerable and had to shield the whole time. So we managed to have her teach the class every day as normal. And she had a teaching assistant or a cover supervisor who was there physically in the classroom to monitor behaviour, but it ensured that she was connected to her class and that those relationships were kept at the fore. We also had 2 teaching assistants who were clinically extremely vulnerable, so they were using breakout rooms, using Teams. We were doing live lessons from the classroom, and then they would support any children who were at home, or they'd be assigned to children with different needs who they would do one-to-one support. We've also had 2 teachers who have had to self-isolate through track and trace, and 2 TAs, and it's been making sure that they're involved 100% all of the time, so that they're not feeling frustrated or not part of the school community, because it's lonely enough if they're having to shield, let alone not be part of the community. I think we did make people laugh on the first teacher day of the year. We set that standard because we had Tina, one of our TAs, who was shielding, and she was on an iPad and being wheeled around the different groups for discussion, but it was definitely an inclusive environment. Now, our vision was to balance the experience in using blended learning approaches and develop the confidence in Teams as a digital platform. So we'd asked staff to start playing around with different apps while they were teaching physically in school. But we also had been getting them used to using Teams, and it really had to be balanced. And we thought we'd got a really balanced view. However, then we had some bubbles pop. And we had a bubble pop in one year group who were really lacking in confidence in Teams and using the apps, and they had some behaviour difficulties as well, and they thought, you know, we're just managing to keep the children going, it's not working for us yet. And then we had another year group whose bubble closed, and they'd felt confident before the bubble closed because they'd played around with the different apps. They'd played around with the apps, they'd tried different teachers teaching the whole year group. So it really showed us that although we thought we'd got it nailed, it wasn't quite there. So we took the learning that we had from the year 6 bubble and then we spread that across the school, so we were ready for the second lockdown. And these are the things that we found most helpful. So we had to ensure that ground rules were set and children fully understood them. We needed to slow down and let ourselves take longer online, because if we allowed ourselves to take longer on time, we were not flustered and neither were the children. We needed to keep a simple yet familiar structure to lessons, the 3-part lesson, the I do, the we do, and you do it alone. We also needed to use those breakout rooms. The breakout rooms were an absolute hit in year 6. We were able to differentiate and challenge at all times. And through using those breakout rooms, we were able to build up the children's experience of apps which engage. And we encouraged all cameras to be on to ensure face-to-face interaction. We needed to be able to see the children needed to be able to see us. And if you watch any of our videos, that you won't be, thank goodness, we smiled and laughed at our own mistakes. We definitely learned along the way. And then the apps that we used, you'll see here, we were quite used to using Notebook in the classroom and Forms, but we use Kahoot, we also use Flipgrid, and we also, in some areas of English during this lockdown, we gave the children their personal notebooks that were stored in the English channel so that it could be continuous work. But we were able to cascade that learning across all year groups to give them that foundation in feeling confident online. I think that sums it up, Mr. Peet, doesn't it?
That's great. Thanks, Estelle. As Estelle pointed out, it was clear to us that right from the beginning of the autumn term, we had to get that familiarity there of Teams and the platform, and made sure that the confidence was there, not only in the pupils, but also in the staff to be able to deliver that. And it's only by having that familiarity that we've been able to have the success that we've had, and because it gets rid of all the how do you log on? What's my password? Where do I go next? Because we practiced this so many times, our children became so familiar with that, and which is why when Year 6 went through that bubble closure and they'd already practiced this skill set, it allowed the transition to the learning to be so much more succinct. Learning was much smarter, and because our children were familiar, which was the complete essence of what we wanted to achieve. So coming into January 21, it became a new year. It was a new focus for us. We focused on the lessons that we'd learnt, and we now started to be proactive rather than reactive. We wanted to make sure that all our classrooms and all our teachers could perform in exactly the way that Year 6 had performed when they went into their two-week lockdown. And now we need to make sure that, the eventuality of lockdown or bubble closure and the eventual lockdown for full school lockdown, we needed to carefully plan for that, and we needed to consider what was the approach that we needed to do. So the engagement for EYFS and Key Stage 1, we said that we wanted to carry on with the familiarity that our parents were used to, so we made sure that we wanted to go through that platform of Tapestry, again to maintain that familiarity. So our lessons were recorded on YouTube initially, but after Trust Protocol, this recording feature was changed, and actually it made complete sense to us of why were we uploading child videos and teacher videos to YouTube when YouTube was a 13-year-old platform. And what we were finding is as our children were accessing those YouTube clips, you would get the adverts coming down the side, and in some cases children were then clicking on those adverts and taking away from the actual learning and the videos that were being presented. So we had no control whether that child was watching that full video or not, because it was recorded and going onto YouTube. So we actually decided to move away from that after discussing that with the trust. So then now what was happening is that those video links were being placed on the Tapestry platform, which our parents were used to, but then that was then hyperlinked into Teams, which then they could operate the lessons, which were then recorded in Microsoft Stream. We found in Key Stage 1, and this was something that kind of again hit home to us, is that we were still missing that connectedness and the relationship, which is so important with our early years children and their teacher. We needed to start the day in that positive manner with a live welcome session, and so again the Teams link was posted into Tapestry, and the parent just needed to click on that link, which would then take them to their Teams account. And this then progressed to live story time, followed then by phonics and maths. And it was fantastic to see that in those registration sections, those welcome meetings, first thing in the morning at 8:45, the children were so excited to see their class teacher. And that was only possible because we were able to give every child in EYFS 2 and in Year 1 a tablet to do so. We made sure that there was no barrier there, that even if there were 5 or 6 children in the family, that particular child had their tablet, which they could log on to their learning that was expected. I just want to share with you a quick video. Hopefully this is going to work. This is a maths lesson which was delivered by our foundation stage. So, opening the doors. Just that opportunity to see every child, welcome every child individually, suddenly made that opportunity to connect so much more real. And the senior leadership team at Mowmacre laugh at me because I talk about dissolving the screen, and they're probably laughing now if you look at their pictures, be like, about dissolving that screen so the screen doesn't become a barrier to that connectedness of those children. And that first child that popped up and just went, ah, because they suddenly saw their teacher, was absolutely fantastic. I'm just going to move through to 3 minutes 54. Oh, here we go. This is something that EYFS started to do each day, that they had their work uploaded to the screen, and what Laura would do, she would select showcase work to share with all the children. And if you can look at the bottom of the screen there, you can see all the children which are online, they've logged in, and then what Laura is doing is celebrating that work. People aren't seeing the video. Can you hear the video?
I can, Matt. I can see it and hear it.
You can see it and hear it, right? Yep. Okay. Let me just play it again. I'm very aware of time. Sorry, Ralph, that you couldn't see that. Hopefully you can get that sorted if it is your tech. Moving on to year one, I'm really aware of time, but I'm not going to play that video, but hopefully you'll be able to get this this PowerPoint and this video at a later date. But I just wanted to show the inquiry line there on the left-hand side, which is our planning structure of moving through what the children are learning. So that's something which the children are very familiar with in the classroom, but we wanted to make sure that familiarity remained in these live lessons as well. And even to the point on these are screen grabs from the video, even to the point where the children were assessing their learning. Where do they think they are? Are they deepening? Are they mastering? What is their understanding of their learning? And we still went through that process. So what do we do in Key Stage 2? Well, Key Stage 2, again, the New Year focus, lessons were all delivered live. Again, morning registration, English, maths, and the class novel that they were having. Every child who needed a laptop got it. They got their internet data cards as well. We provided them with a dongle as well if they didn't have internet access. And this was a great help to some of our traveller children who didn't have internet access on their site where they were staying. As Estelle said, those short, manageable chunks of learning with tasks, and they were supported through the breakout rooms, and connectivity didn't become an issue. If they said they didn't have internet, we gave it to them. They didn't have a device, we gave them a device. Nothing was going to stop us providing that learning for our children. Again, I'm going to move through those. Again, it was an example there of using Flipgrid, and I know one of the other presentations from the teachers at Mowmacre, which were in the first session, looked at Flipgrid, so I'll refer you to that. Move forward from that. Something that we did do, which I am going to share with you, is that it just didn't mean that we focused on the academic side. We're also very aware that we wanted to make sure that our children remained active. And I know Emma Turner talked about that this morning, and making sure that the children kept their fitness levels going. And I'm just going to play you a brief start to one of our sports coaches who would do their daily challenges. And again, Billy, one of the again, just trying to make sure that our children remained active. There's lots of flats around Mowmacre Hill, so we wanted to make sure that, you know, because they weren't allowed to go outside, they could still maintain some levels of fitness and working with the team. And, you know, these guys are loved across our school, and, you know, our children love spending time with them. So again, dissolving that screen, bringing our sports coaches into the homes of our children. So connectivity, we had that connectivity with our families and that strong presence. Our children were confident all the way through from EYFS to year 6. The wellbeing team and wellbeing of our children, dissolving the screen and ease of return. You know, we wanted to make sure all our children were comfortable in returning back to school, but they're also comfortable when they were in lockdown. Support by the year group teams, the breakout rooms. It was important that our TAs were online with our children as well, so they were all there to help the smooth running of the lesson. Support by year group team and breakout rooms. Why that's down there twice, I'm not sure. Blending learning is where we want to move forward now. We've invested in all this technology. We want to make sure that we still use that in our classrooms. And the future and what is next for us. Well, what we want to do is now become a showcase Microsoft school, and we're actually going to be putting in our application at the beginning of April to share all our good practice that we've put together over these 2 lockdown periods. You know, our live lessons are I'm so proud of my teachers for putting them together, because they do really engage with our children, and it's been fantastic to see. And if we can get that recognised through Microsoft and become one of their showcase schools, that will be just absolutely fantastic to put all that hard work of my teachers towards that accreditation. Oh, that's not showing at all. Right, interesting. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. Apologies, there's been a few glitches with the slides and the animation, but I hope that you've seen the journey that we went from, in terms of being initially shocked and, you know, to be fair, scared right at the beginning of how on earth are we going to be able to engage all our children, to the point where, you know, we are now fully blended learning within schools, full access to technology within the classrooms. And, you know, and if we were to lock down again, you know, that really wouldn't be an issue in terms of the learning. I am really aware that it's gone 3:15, it's 16 minutes past, and people need to get back to the main hall. Thank you so much for joining us. If you do have any questions, please log them in on this chat and we'll try and get back to you. But I hope that you've seen that this is possible, and we are able to kind of bring that technology there. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. Yeah. Thanks, Rolf. Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thanks, Amy.